Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what's coming up. Celtic celebrate, but will the board back Brendan? Squad announcement. Whose name will be on the Scotland plane? And Ross or Raith? Who has the faith? It's all over. The league may be wrapped up, but there's still so much to look forward to. If you're upset about being relegated, or you're maybe cacking yourself about the final playoff coming up, remember that we can all come together this summer for Scotland's Euro party. It's the Scottish Cup final as well this weekend too. So let me tell you, there'll be plenty of laughs to come from somewhere. A lady who loves to laugh through her own sentences sometimes. A Tartan Army super soldier and senior producer at TNT Sports, Laura Brannan. Hello, mate.
Hello. Hiya. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much for asking. Do you know who else is joining us, Laura Brannan?
It's Findlay Marks.
Findlay Marks, looking mighty fresher than he did last week after his Melbourne City Awards ceremony. Melbourne City Creative Director, Findlay Marks. How are you, pal?
Really good. Yeah. Not feeling much fresher. It's still like 5:30 in the morning here, so early start. But nothing will keep me away from talking about Scottish football. Nothing.
You love it. You absolutely love it. And the darkness as well. So yeah, the league is over, folks. That is it. Another season done. But yeah, we've got Scottish Cup and we've got the Euros to look forward to. But it was quite funny on Saturday, because although it's May, Santa Claus made an appearance at Celtic Park to bring out the Premiership trophy. What was this about again? Can anyone explain this for me?
Yes, I still can't decide if this is the best or worst thing I've ever seen. So Celtic got awarded the trophy at the end of the game, last game of the season, and Santa Claus walked out the tunnel to present the trophy. Now this harks back to at Christmas time. I think it was the Hearts game when Celtic were losing at halftime, or things were going very badly for them during this game. Santa came out to do the halftime draw. He got roundly booed by the crowd. We ripped the piss out of it on this podcast at the time. We then had a good laugh when Rangers then had a dig because they got him out and to give him some love and attention and Christmas joy. And so there was a whole thing at Christmas time, basically. So I think Celtic just saw the kind of the humour in it to bring him back out and make up
Give him his
for
moment.
the bad reception that he got a few months back, and gave him his time to finally get a cheer at Celtic Park.
I think there's still an element of cruelty in this, bringing Santa Claus out in like a 23-degree heat, which is a rare in Scotland, in his full suit. There must have been more than some sweaty balls in Celtic Park that day. Who else has got some funnies for me?
I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was something absolutely brilliant. You know, just when you think you cannot love Super John McGinn anymore, there was a video that was kind of doing the rounds last week where he's singing like the club song of Sevilla. I think it's John McGinn's granddad. He used to be the president of the SFA, and I think folks might remember there was obviously the Champions League final that was in Glasgow, where Zidane scored the incredible goal. But a number of years after that, I think it was Sevilla were playing Espanyol at Hampden, and John McGinn was just a kid. Went to the game, must have kind of like fallen in love with Sevilla at that point. And there's just been like deep-seated love he's had for the club. But he knows like the club song in Spanish, and I think it was at the end of season, or one of the parties or something at the end of season for Aston Villa, that he's got a glass of beer in one hand and he's wholeheartedly singing a song. There's a great Billy Connolly sketch from back in the day where he talks about wandering around Glasgow on a Saturday night with a carry-out, looking for open windows for house parties to go to, basically. And you kind of stoat around and you hear, you know, a commotion. You go to the door and you say, oh, we met Stevie down the pub and he said it was okay to come up, and you get invited into these random house parties. But he's like, there's all these like old school warblers just kind of like singing their hearts out, like, hi, ho, like that. It had total vibes of that. I just absolutely loved it. I just total class from John McGinn, as always. Just love the boy.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? With a pint in his hand. It's very much Bothy Ballad. Love it. Love it.
I don't know. This didn't happen in Scotland, but I just wanted to mention it because I'd love it to happen in Scotland. Did you see in one of the midweek MLS games, a raccoon ran on the pitch?
Do you know what? Yeah.
This is so in your wheelhouse, Laura. It's MLS, which is a league that I know you've got a lot of love for, and an animal on the pitch. Like, you must have just been absolutely buzzing watching this.
It was brilliant, and I think the league themselves put out like a highlights reel of what happened basically for the whole 5 minutes. That it was running around the pitch. I think it covered every blade of grass. It was doing well, and then it was the stewards tried to catch the raccoon as well, falling all over themselves. I've often wondered, like, you see these old videos of like dogs and stuff running on in like South American leagues and everything. I'd absolutely love it if it happened at a game that I was filming, but I would hate to be the person chasing the animal in front of a full stadium, because they are absolutely rooting for the animal to dodge you and run away from you and wait for you to fall on your arse. So it would be so humiliating. But as a camera operator, I would be buzzing off that.
Have you not seen that? I think is it Espanyol in La Liga, that every year they bring out dogs as mascots.
Oh,
for like one, and I think it's like to do with something like to try and like give a dog a home type thing.
Yeah,
rehome them. Why can't we do that in Scotland?
Brilliant. I remember actually one time, it's when I was at Celtic, that's been about 10 years ago now, they did something with like the Blind Dog Association, and Scott Brown walked out with like 2 golden labs or something onto the pitch before the game, so that was quite nice. Definitely massive fan of that. Huge fan.
Huge fan. Anything else?
There was one other thing, again, didn't happen in Scottish football, but I wanted to link it to Scottish football.
TNT's changed you, Laura.
Well, this one was in Germany. So Marco Reus is leaving Borussia Dortmund. It was his last game, and there was a sign up.
Final.
Well, no, there was a sign up on the vending, like the vendors you get in the concourse, where everyone would go up and buy their hot dogs and their beers, because it's Germany. And there was a sign up on the till saying that, thanks for everything, the farewell beer is on me. He paid for 80,000 odd supporters to have a beer on him at his final game. I love that so much.
80,000?
Well, it's an 80,000 stadium, so I mean, he must have covered enough for everyone to have a pint each. But just that gesture, I love that gesture of the player giving back to the fans. But can you imagine that happening here? I mean, we can't even be allowed to have a pint at the game because we're not trusted. Never mind the players actually paying for the fans to enjoy that on the last game.
I just wonder.
That's like 300 grand.
You sit there calculating.
If that's like €4, that's like 320 grand.
I mean,
that can't be right. I retired at that.
Footballers are well paid, Andrew.
That's over $250,000. Jesus.
I just really love the thought of maybe there being a team in Scotland where a player wants to do that, and they just absolutely don't have enough stock on hand to meet supply, and there's like wee Genie in the confectionery bar, you know, handing out a Mars bar instead, being like, it's all I've got, you'll need to take it. I don't, if you've got an allergy, just take a Snickers anyway. I don't have anything else.
We Genie would never ask if you've got any allergies.
Absolutely not. You'll get a rolling square and you'll enjoy it.
She'll be the type of person that goes, you know, it's like, I've got your veggie lasagna there, and that's your meat lasagna, but there's only one ladle. just digging into the meat lasagna. There's your your veggie, right? There's your veggie, man. Right, there you go. Right, enough laughs. On to some news.
Regret it's not. It's a good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
Right, so Laura, I've got this on the script The very first headline from us in the news: Hearts can get automatic Europa League group stages. Eh?
Yeah, there's a permutation that could see this happen. It's very, very
Favorite
tenuous.
football word at this time of the year, isn't it? Permutations.
If it happens, it'd be incredible. So there's a scenario where if Borussia Dortmund win the Champions League final, they're obviously playing Real Madrid on the 1st of June, and Atalanta win the Europa League final. Now they're playing Bayer Leverkusen, who haven't lost all season. So this is where it gets a bit unlikely. If the two of them win their respective finals and Atalanta finish in either 5th or 6th in Serie A, then Hearts will qualify automatically for the group stages of the Europa League. Now, Atalanta are currently they're currently sitting 5th in the league, but they do have 2 games still to go in this season. So the chances of them finishing 5th is actually probably the least likely of these scenarios, and that could ruin it for Hearts. But yeah, there is a kind of scenario here where they could get automatic qualification, which would be incredible for them because having 8 games guaranteed, especially in this new setup, would be outstanding for them.
Well, interestingly enough, as we record this right now, Atalanta are on 66 already. So Atalanta will likely finish 5th anyway. So that's already a good start.
They might jump up. Because that's what I
right.
mean. It's unlikely they'll slip down to 6th or less, but they're like they could jump up more. But like they're also playing Bayer Leverkusen in the final, and they don't lose games. They're not losing right now, so the chances are slim, but it would be incredible if it does happen.
I wonder how many pints Xabi Alonso will buy Leverkusen fans. That'd be good. Last week there was breaking news after we'd finished recording at Hibs.
Classic.
Where Nick Montgomery got sacked, which is really sad news for him. But more weirdly, Malky Mackay got appointed as Hibs sporting director. I mean, you're shaking your head, Finn. I know you were quite positive of Nick Montgomery because of the work that he'd done over in Australia. There's rumours that he might even go back. But this seems like a really bizarre time for Hibs, but maybe kind of a weirdly exciting summer ahead too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hibs just seem to be kind of lolloping between big change to big change, and I think they think, all right, we've got the right person now, and this will be quite a progressive and good appointment for the club going forward. And then a number of months later, they're just right back in the same position. I said on the pod last week, and this is before we knew Montgomery was going, when he was under pressure, kind of like I don't know what Hibs fans want, because what the club needs is stability. You need to buy into somebody's plan longer term. And I think longer term he would have been good. Also, when you look at replacements, who do you want coming in? Somebody that's good with working with young players, that can that has a kind of demonstrable track record of over a number of seasons building something positive and leaving a legacy, is somebody that's got the same profile that Nick Montgomery has. And while some of the football's been a bit up and down, and it's one of these things, maybe he lost the dressing room by that point as well. Certainly, I know there was not a lot of love lost by the time that he went. I still don't know where else you go from here. And I know Malky Mackay's had his detractors because of things that have gone on off the pitch in the past. He just seems kind of emblematic of the type of person that perennially gets jobs in Scottish football, who aren't, I would suggest, aren't particularly progressive or the kind of person who will be doing things to further the game here. It's kind of like this jobs for the boys type things. I think once you get to a certain level in Scottish football, it's like you're kind of always going to be linked with certain jobs or whatever. Mark McGee's another name that just comes to mind. It's like, even though his track record has been, certainly for the sizable chunk of the recent past, not very good, people still seem to think of them as go-to people to like sort out situations or do stuff. And I don't know. I to me, it felt like a bit of a backward step. I've got to be honest.
What about the fact that, I don't know if you guys know much about this, but the fact that Malky Mackay comes in as this sort of sporting director, but they've already got a director of football in Brian McDermott, who brought Nick Montgomery to the club, and Lee Johnson as well. So like, where's the how is this link going to work between the two of them? Supposed to be kind of running the football department. I don't know who's the boss. Probably Malky Mackay
Yeah.
if he's sporting director. It just seems a bit crazy. And now you have David Gray, who's taken the club now for the fourth time as interim manager, year after year, in fact, every year for the last 4 years. He's thrown his name in the hat. Definitely, he thinks he's ready to take the job. Who knows? Is the Hibs fans want just a Hibs guy, and David Gray is that, or do they want someone with a lot of experience because they kind of had experience now? I just wonder if the problems at the club are bigger than just the manager.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the variation of the managers that they've had over the last 3 weeks. It was Lee Johnson, Jack Ross, Sean Maloney. They've all been different types of managers. Obviously, Sean Maloney was like his first gig in management, very raw and experience. You've got Jack Ross, who had a good pedigree in Scottish football going into that, and off the back, certainly at St Mirren, he built a name for himself. And then obviously Lee Johnson, who'd came up from down south, done a lot in his career himself. So where do you go? Do you go for that raw and experience again, or do you go for a well-known name in Scotland, or pluck somebody out of England? Like, they've tried it all. So that's where I feel like there needs to be kind of more decisions made above that to have the same sort of the thinking is aligned through the club here. Which takes me back to what I was going to say about Malky Mackay. I just find that the term jobs for boys is exactly the way to describe him. It's very strange that somebody who he's quite a controversial past, and he just seems to have pushed that aside, and everyone just seems to forget about it. And not just forget about it, and the whole give him a second chance, which fine, I completely understand that argument of it, but it's let's give him a second chance and keep giving him big jobs, bigger and bigger jobs at bigger clubs. And I don't really understand how somebody like this can get away with the things that he did, and nobody really ever says anything about it or calls him out on it or kind of questions why he's getting this. So the whole appointment was just very odd for me.
I think Hibs hierarchy will actually be kicking themselves about Sean Maloney, because his career since he went down south to Wigan in the Championship last season, he couldn't save them from safety, but they started this season with an 8-point deduction. And he's actually created a style of football that Wigan fans are enjoying. They couldn't sign a single player for most of this season as well, and he steered them to a top half finish. That's a good sign of good management, and something that, when things aren't going well, because it was a downward trajectory for Wigan, he's been able to kind of prop it back up again. I'm really excited to see how Maloney gets on next season with them as well, to be honest. To add to the misery for Hibs fans, who are definitely switching over to another podcast right now. But some seriously legendary figures are leaving the club. Paul Hanlon, absolute stalwart for the club captain as well. And Lewis Stevenson, they've had their final bout at the club, and I don't think they're retiring though, are they? They're just looking for a new club. So the fact that Hibs maybe don't want to keep them any longer is a wee shame. But did you hear that the families had to pay for hospitality in their final game? How minging is that, by the way? That you've given your life to a football club and you can't just give a few comps?
It was just a bit of a weird thing. I think because the way that I had understood the story, I think was it not Michael Stewart that was telling the story on social media somewhere? But he what they'd said, apparently the club had offered the families of Hanlon and Stevenson tables at the hospitality for the final home game that they would play at Easter Road. And then expected them to pay for it. I was like, you can't really offer something as a gift or whatever. But also, it's just in that thing of for the incredible service those two players have given to the club, and for the moments that they've brought joy to the supporter base. Surely, one comped dinner could be within the reach of the club. But I think it's one of those things that it's such a small thing, but it's not. It's more to do with the gesture, I think, of what it would have meant. And I think a lot of fans felt it was kind of endemic maybe of how they see the board in treating people, fans, supporters, and that kind of like just goes back full circle to this whole thing about the thing with the Malky Mackay appointment. I think they feel it's not in a good place.
What do you think of players coming off a couple of minutes early in their last game and getting this, going around every player on their team, getting applauded?
I'm more interested. I feel like this is a loaded question, Laura. That you've got your opinion, and we are just here to listen to you.
No, I'm just interested because I obviously saw it with the two of them coming off midweek. Joe Hart did the same in Celtic's last game.
It's quite common.
Look, I know it's very common in getting subbed before the end of the game to get your round of applause from the stadium, but to go around every player on the pitch feels like it's kind of milking a bit much. Is that not kind of?
If the fans enjoy it, that's all that matters. That's what it's there for, really, isn't it?
Over the top.
I think especially when it's final day of the season, because especially if it's not a title deciding last day of the season, it's always got a bit of an air of that feeling of the last day of school before the summer holidays. It's kind of like the footballing equivalent of the teacher wheeling out the TV, for the last class of the year. It's like everybody's just kind of messing around anyway. It's got that slightly non-serious vibe to it anyway. So I think
I'm just getting mega grumpy with all the things I'm seeing at the end of season games right now, like the pitch invasions for quarterfinal playoff wins and all sorts. It's like, gonna calm down, guys. I mean, what was it? The Man City players had to tell their fans to not come on the pitch while the game was still getting played.
Yeah,
guys, you're ripping the piss now. Just stay in the stand. It's not necessary. And then they just jaunt on the pitch anyway. And they're like, oh, all right, okay, I'm here now. And it's not even like this explosion of like joy. It's just, I'm just doing it for the sake of it. It's just not appropriate.
Laura hates fun. Oh well, not hates fun, just hates happiness. No football fan happiness for anyone.
This is what being a lifetime Scotland supporter does to someone, isn't it?
Broken. I'm bitter and broken.
You guys were speaking about jobs for the boys, and there's changes all over Scottish football potentially incoming, but one big change is that Willie Collum is the new boss of referees in Scottish football, to which many Scottish football fans was like, oh, fuck. So, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, he's had a great refereeing career. He's heavily been liked at UEFA. He's had some massive games in the Champions League, Europa League and the like. Not so much recently, but he's coming to the end of his career. He's got a lot of experience. And he's beaten probably a few other referees to it too. So what do you think?
I think even more than the Malky Mackay thing, this just reeked of the whole jobs for the boys thing. It really did, because I think trying to be as objective as possible with this. I don't think it's unfair to say that there's pretty much supporter of any Scottish football team will be able to come up with a list of things from matches that Willie Collum has refereed where they'd be like, they feel something's aggrieved about them. I think regardless of who you support, I don't think it's unfair to say Willie Collum is objectively a very poor referee and has been for a number of seasons. I know that you've alluded to the fact that he's been a high-level UEFA referee in the past, but that has not been for a number of years, and I think that's quite telling. Not just the fact that he isn't, none of our referees are seen that way. Very few Scottish referees are refereeing European games at the highest level in the Champions League, and there are no Scottish referees that will be going to the Euros this summer. I think that's really telling. But I think in the wake of Crawford Allen stepping down and there being such a furor about refereeing standards in general in Scotland, I don't know what I was hoping for. I think I was kind of hopeful that they might try and do something where they take on board the criticism that's been coming at them and the standard of refereeing, which I think we can all agree collectively is very poor. The fact that there are so many bad decisions being made week on week, the fact that VAR has clunkily been introduced and actually probably created more problems than solving them, which is never a good thing. For them in their statement to come out and say, we've looked at people apparently from all over the world, and yet they've decided that Willie Collum is the best possible person to address the standard of refereeing in Scotland. I think it kind of makes a mockery, I think, of looking where the fans are in all this as well. Because to me, it's not so much sticking your fingers in your ears, it's pointing and laughing as well at the fans being like, oh, you think there's a problem with our refereeing? Right, we're going to take the guy who's probably the most contested figure in the country, who hasn't improved as a referee in a number of seasons, and we're going to get him to try and address the problems. I think it just smacks of jobs for the boys. Like, it is such a terrible appointment. It made me absolutely furious. But it just is totally endemic, I think, of the way the SFA refuse to address any of the major issues in the games, and they'll just keep doing what they're doing to satisfy things for their friends and people that they know.
And Marshall is saved! Yes! One big yes!
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, things are getting real. We are 3 weeks, folks. 3 weeks away from Germany, 2 weeks from the warm-up friendlies, and just days away from the squad being announced. I can't wait. Here to add some more excitement, other than my own, is the Tartan Scarfs, Gordon Sheach. How are you doing, Gordon?
I'm good. I'm good. As you so eloquently put there, yeah, this things are getting very, very, very real. I've been buying the magazines. I've got the 442, got the sticker album. I've got some match attacks cards. I don't know what they are. I don't know what you do with them. I know that I've got a shiny John McGinn one. So yeah, things are just getting very exciting, and there's no amount of Euros content I can't consume at this stage.
Oh my god! Yeah, you are sounding very much like Laura Brannan, who found the Scottish edition of 442, wasn't it, Laura?
Oh, I had to get it sent to me, yeah. I couldn't get it down here. Couldn't get it in London.
Did you get a wee care package for like some tatty scones?
No, actually, that's a good point. No, that's a good point. My mum just sent me the magazine. Didn't get any tatty scones with it. Maybe that's coming next week.
So, Gordon, we are days away from the squad being announced, but have you got your ticket for Germany? Are you heading?
I do, yes. I will be out there in a couple of capacities, but I will be there for the game against Hungary. So the third game, because I thought of any game I could go to, I thought the third game, obviously touching all the wood, that, if that's the game that in our 150 years that we've been at this international football game, if that's the game that takes us to the knockout stage for the first time ever, that is just a moment of history that you can't beat. You can't top that. So that's the one I'll be at in person for.
Well, don't touch too much wood. But Gordon, it's one of those. This squad being an announcement, we're absolutely riddled with injuries. Laura's been keeping us up to date every week. It seems a little bit doom and gloom, but are you hopeful that we've got a squad that can do something really special?
Hold on, to be fair, right, I give bad news every week. I don't want to tempt fate here, but it seems like everyone seems to have come through the last day of the Premier League season in England. I was checking out all the different players. Seems like everyone played the full game or came off, quite typically around 86 minutes. There's been no worrying news that has came out yet. So for the first time in a few weeks, I don't think there is a lot of bad news to give right now.
Oh, that's good. How about you, Gordon? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I will be completely candid that, a few weeks back, I think it was that Saturday when we all thought that McTominay had blown his knee out, I was very much in the doomest of doom and gloom at that stage, thinking this is getting intolerable with how many injuries we're racking up here, and especially when you think about a guy like Scott. No one deserves to be there more, and no one has done more to get us there. So for him to come on as a sub to salvage a 1-1 draw against Burnley and then potentially have his Euros ruined, that just felt like the cruelest of cruel twists. But as Laura says, like actually the clouds seem to have cleared. And, we had our doubts about McTominay and Cal McGregor and Tierney and all those guys, Gilmore even, and they all seem actually kind of okay now. I mean, in terms of what you'd think is Steve Clarke's established first 11, it's really only now Aaron Hickey, who it seems like has lost his battle with injury. But other than that, I think we're actually looking all right.
And what about, Laura, what about the likes of the lad at Sturm Graz, the ex-Motherwell player? Do you think he's in worth a shout? Max Johnston, that's it.
I think he's an outside shout. He can play it right back. So with Hickey being ruled out, which I just want to kind of note, the Hickey one's strange, right? He hasn't played since October. But this was a hamstring injury, and I know you can get bad hamstring injuries, but this seems like a particularly bad one. He's been back in training for quite a while now, but it just feels like Thomas Frank keeps saying, oh no, he's back in training, but we're not going to see him back playing anytime soon. I feel like there's some question marks here over what is actually wrong, and why is it taking so long for the recovery period. But in saying that, because he's now out, we're looking for right backs. We've got Nathan Patterson, who's still a major doubt. He's also got a hamstring injury. It's not clear yet whether he'll make it or not. You've got Anthony Ralston, looks like the obvious one just now that's going to get picked to the squad. And then it's question marks after that. There's a few boys that have been mentioned. Max Johnson, like he was included for the squad. I think it was a France friendly he sat on the bench for. So he's in Steve Clarke's mind. He won the league at the weekend with Sturm Graz, last minute winner as well to go top of the Austrian Bundesliga. So and they also won the cup as well a few weeks back. So things are happening.
We're all getting distracted by Gordon's wonderful black cat right now, which I think is
was
the
amazing.
perfect omen. Has to be
luck.
the perfect omen for us.
That was class. So yeah, to round up, the problem with Max is he's not been playing regularly. He tends to come on as a sub more than he does start games. So there may be question marks over just how much experience he's been getting this year or how much sharp he is, but he's clearly in Steve Clarke's mind, and he is a very, very talented young boy. So personally, I would put him in, considering how kind of sparse we are in that position.
What about goalkeepers? Because Angus Gunn has been between the sticks for quite a while, and I think he's done absolutely excellent. But he had an absolute shocker for Norwich at the weekend against Leeds. The first two goals were absolutely inexcusable. But we've also seen Craig Gordon come back for Hearts recently too. Obviously, there's rumours that he might not be in the squad. Maybe he will be in the squad. I think he definitely will. But who do you think should be starting in between the sticks, guys?
I mean, I think, look, it's Guns. It's 100%. It's Angus Gunn's jersey. It's Angus Gunn's gloves. He will start for Scotland at the Euros. I think beyond that, I can't see a world where he doesn't take Craig Gordon. I think Craig Gordon has to go. I think even just for that continuity, the fact that you look at, we had McLaughlin, Marshall and Gordon at the last Euros. I think that experience, like, again, we speak a lot about the experience that they got in 2021 and that how important that'll be coming into this summer. So for that reason alone, I think you have to take Craig Gordon, because he's been there, he's done it, he's gone to major finals. So even if he's not there to play, as the voice of advice in Angus Gunn's ear, having been to a major finals with Scotland, I think is invaluable. So I think Gordon definitely goes, and then third choice is up for grabs.
I think we'll see 4 named in the squad on Wednesday, because this is 26-man squad that goes to Germany, but
yeah.
I mean, we saw was it Hungary last week named like a 38-man squad.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think that who we'll see named this week coming isn't a clear indication yet of who will actually go in a couple of weeks' time, because we've also got the 2 friendlies coming up. So I fully expect all 4 keepers to be in on Wednesday. But the rules aren't actually this clear. I don't know if Gordon, you can clear this up for me. The rules say that in the 26-man squad, it will be 3 keepers named. It doesn't say a minimum or maximum of 3. So to me, that implies you can only pick 3, but it's not 100% clear on if you can actually up that to 4.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has to be 3. Three seems to be, again, I was trying to do my digging as well, and I was looking into the last squads for the last Euros, and there was actually plenty of teams actually that ended up having 4 goalkeepers in their squads, but that was only because one got injured and had to drop out, and then they were allowed to replace a goalkeeper with
Yeah,
a
that is the
third.
one player you can replace. Yeah, the one
Yeah.
position you can replace
And again,
during the competition.
you're absolutely right. So the squad that gets announced on Wednesday does not have to be 26 man. It can be more than that, and then they can cut down. So, for example, like Germany currently have 4 goalkeepers in their squad, and I think they named a 27 man squad, so they'll presumably cut one of them by the time it gets to the tournament. I think it's the 7th of June that the final squads have to be submitted.
Yeah, in saying that though, Steve Clarke won't test any of them. I think he's going to play both the friendlies, and we'll be none the wiser over which one he's going to drop.
Is it maybe easier sending home, say, 10 or 12 players from a squad rather than like 2 or 3? Is that not quite heartbreaking? Is it maybe easier if there's a big group of guys that know that they're not going to make the final squad and head home?
I'd only respond to that by thinking the more that go, the less one-to-one time coaches have with players. So the mainstays of the squad, you know, they'll be all right. But anyone who's on the periphery, coaches might want to focus on them a little bit more, rather than having to focus on 5 other guys that might be in that vying for that position or whatever. So the smaller the squad is, the tighter it is, and the more and less distraction there can be too. That would be my own thinking cap from a coaching point of view, with all those coaching badges that I have and Scotland setups that I've been involved in.
Well, who do you think? Who do
knows?
you think are on the outside? Who's an outside chance? Do you think?
For the whole squad,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about Connor Barron from Aberdeen could be selected, which I think is really interesting. Scored one of the best goals of the season as well. I think that could be very interesting to see him in the lineup.
They tend to bring a few kind of young boys along for experience as well, that are kind of boot boys almost in the final tournament. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see someone like that, or even Tommy Conway. Someone who is young, can do it if we need to turn to them, but I doubt they'll get any kind of time to feature.
And he's had a good season. Scored a lot of goals in the Championship. Scored a couple of goals against West Ham in the FA Cup as well. Still young player, but he's been through the 21s as well. So like the Scotland coaching staff will know him inside out. They'll have a lot of reports on him. I think certainly like when you look at what Steve Clarke, the approach he took for 2021. When the squads got expanded to 26 players, he used those extra 3 slots effectively for guys that were almost prospect players, for the guys that he was investing, thinking these are going to be the next generation. Let's get them in, spend a month with the Scotland squad, which, you know, no Scotland manager had the chance to do for a full generation and a half, and see where they go. So obviously that was Turnbull, Gilmore and Patterson, who were all uncapped when they got called up to the Euro squads, and then they played in the friendlies pre-tournament. So I think I can see him going in that direction, you know, whether it's, like you say, Tommy Conway, Max Johnson, and back in training, probably back fit, Ben Doak as well. I mean, I think earlier in the season, I felt like he was an absolute shoo-in to be in the squad, you know, given how much he was around that Liverpool first team squad. Obviously, been injured, hasn't come back to play for Liverpool yet, but if he's fit and he's got, again, in that same way, this is a guy that we believe could be a prospective future star for Scotland, I'd take him. 100% I'd take him.
That's interesting that you know, I totally agree. I'd love to see Ben Doak in the top squad. But what about someone like James Forrest? A guy who really hasn't been in this season at all, but in the last few weeks has totally helped Celtic to the league title with some massive goals, key moments. Is he not someone that could come into this Scotland squad? And I know there's been question marks on him when he has played for Scotland, but that experience and that winning mentality is quite vital for any football player. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with having him in. I personally, I've had issues with him in the past because I've always felt like the James Forrest we see for Scotland is not the James Forrest we see for Celtic. They're two very different players, and that is so frustrating to watch. There's times with Hampden I remember screaming because he wouldn't cross like the halfway line almost, and it was like somebody put like a wall up, and I don't know if it was like the way that Craig Levein or Gordon Strachan had told him to play and wouldn't want him to get as attacking as he did for Celtic, but it was a very frustrating time to watch him. And saying that though, I remember it was at the Nations League against, it was either Albania or Israel. It was the first year we played in the Nations League, and he had an absolute stormer of a campaign there. I say campaign, it was only a couple of games. So he has done well for us. I don't know how we'd fit into Steve Clarke's system though. We don't tend to play wingers like that. So it would require a change of shape if that's necessary, fine, and it means that we're were versatile and able to change in terms of what team are playing. I'm not against it. I'm just a little apprehensive.
I think Forrest is a good shout. I think he is. Again, he's someone who's come into a really good run of form at the end of the season. He's a known quantity. We know what we're going to get from him. I know he's played some games potentially at right wing back for Scotland in the past. I think if Hickey and Patterson were fit and available and in the squad, I think there's no chance that James Forrest, we'd be speaking about James Forrest right now. But just that big gaping hole in that right side of our defence, it does beg the question. And I think the options that we've spoken about with other guys, Ralston's only got a handful of caps. Max Johnson's been in a squad, but it hasn't really played for us. James Forrest does have a lot of caps. He's got a lot of experience. So maybe he's the one that they turn to.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see what the squad is. I'm so excited to see Germany lose 5-0 to Scotland on the opening day. It's just like 98 all over again. What is it with Scotland in opening ceremonies, eh?
Think they'll turn up in their kilts.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Hope so.
You could see Steve Clarke in a kilt? Not a chance.
I don't know, I actually could. Do you know, I thought it was weird. I watched Man City getting the Premier League trophy and when Pep Guardiola came out in his Man City strip. And I thought it was a really weird thing to see, managers in football strips. It was just something didn't sit right with me. So I can't imagine Steve Clarke in a strip, but I could imagine him in a kilt.
It would be nice. Steve Clarke in a kilt. Finn, you for it?
100%.
Football, bloody hell.
Well, Celtic celebrated 3 in a row with a 3-2 victory over St Mirren on Saturday. It's the season that's had its ups and downs, shall we say, for Celtic fans and manager Brendan Rodgers, to be honest. But the job's done, and the potential double is still on the cards too. What could we see from Celtic, though, in the summer as they gear up for a revamped Champions League format? Delighted to say Anthony Joseph from Sky Sports News is here to chat to us about it. So, Anthony, first of all, Rodgers proved some doubters wrong. He's won the league at Celtic again. And he was right about them coming alive in the final weeks. It was a first title race, though, in a long time. I just wonder if Rodgers has really answered all his critics and won the full Celtic fan base back again.
I think he's answered a lot of his critics, but I mean, it wasn't like a box office stellar season for Celtic. Maybe the ending was, but throughout the season, it very much looked like the team was going through the motions. They didn't seem to have a sort of identity to their play. Very much relied on individual brilliance to win games at times. A lot of other teams found them quite predictable to play against and to stifle them at the other end of the park as well. But they came through it, and their form picked up. I mean, they've only lost one game in the last 6 months, which is still quite a good stat to have. But yeah, he said in the final few weeks that things had come together. They started getting players back from injury. They had a lot of injuries, to be fair. They did throughout the season. The centre-back situation at the start of the season was a proper emergency. They've had their troubles and they've got through it. And the last month or so, they have looked like they meant business. He's won back a lot of fans, I'm sure. Answered a lot of critics in terms of maybe his hunger and his desire, and I think you're starting to see a sort of bit of anger coming out of Rodgers in terms of how he's picked certain quotes from people in over the past few months. He's kept receipts and he's going through them and saying which person quoted there, and he's taken it quite personally.
Did you see this in the post-match on the pitch, actually, during the celebrations on Sky yesterday? So on Saturday, sorry. Brendan Rodgers was being interviewed and he starts going on a rant about how he told the players, such and such said this, he set this negative narrative. I mentioned which journalist it was, who in the media have said X, Y, and Z. But then Callum McGregor was running over to get him at this point for like the big team photo in front of the boards and just dragged him away mid-rant about this narrative that the media said. Brendan Rodgers must have been thinking about this and planning it for weeks and weeks, and then his captain just dragged him away mid-rant. So I thought that was quite fun.
It's like your drunk dad at the Christmas party with all your families. Oh, come on, Dad.
Come on, we need to go and sing for the song. Come on, let's go.
Did he get a chance to share his naughty and nice list with Santa as well? Is that what he was doing? Was that part of it?
He was doing that in the down low in the tunnel. What I wanted to like it was like the Joe Hart show on Saturday, I think, when they got the trophy celebration. Fans adore him. There was a big tifo display at the start of the second half for him. He adores the fans. He comes across really well in all these kind of post-match interviews, talking about why he's chose to retire. It's obviously his last game next weekend in the cup final. But have you been surprised by just like the sort of legacy that he will leave behind now, like the impact he's had, and how are they going to replace him now?
He can certainly be a pundit in Scotland and England now. He's got that wrapped
He's
up.
got the gift of the gab, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something. When Joe Hart signed for Celtic, I did not think he would end up becoming quite an iconic player and someone that the fans would just adore. And I think that's certainly happened in the last maybe 9 months or so, that connection has really been built, because there was still quite a lot of critics of Joe Hart, people saying that he did need to be replaced and things like that. And that's more of his age and the fact that he was coming towards the end of his career, and you could tell that he wasn't performing to the level that he could have, although in the last 6 months he's certainly stepped up. But in terms of the sort of loving that the fans have with him, it's more because of the way he's just embraced the opportunity and embraced the club. I feel he's really bought into it, and I find it similar with when you talk of like outsiders who come into Celtic and Rangers and really feel it, and that's what he was talking about, coming and just feeling the club and probably not realizing just how big and how amazing it is if you're doing well and giving your all, how adored you are. And he was talking about he's never been this adored in his life by any football support. So that is the pull of Celtic, and Rangers obviously have that kind of pull as well. Outsiders who come in, if they embrace it, they really feel it and they love it.
Just going back to what we're talking about at the top of the show, really from a Rodgers point of view, I think domestically he's proven himself to be, the best. Like his record is kind of unimpeachable, but maybe looking towards what he did even in his first spell at Celtic in Europe, there's maybe quite a lot of questions still there. Obviously, with next season being the last time for now that the league champions qualify automatically for the Champions League, and with the format of the group changing, do you think, firstly, that Rodgers will be looking forward to maybe having the chance to pit himself against the best in Europe at that level next season? And do you think as well that there's much need for a bit of a, not necessarily a rebuild, but certainly bringing in reinforcements during the summer that will allow Rodgers to go at that in the way that he sees best?
Yeah, I think it's a massive blow that Scotland has lost its automatic Champions League place for the season after next, but they've got to embrace the challenge this season. This is what Brendan Rodgers has really come in for. When I was talking to contacts when he was coming in, they were talking about next season's Champions League is going to be roughly about £60 million just for being in the league phase of it, and it's 8 games minimum. If you finish between 9th and 24th, it's 10 games minimum. So football from September to February of the league phase. So a fifth of your season is going to be in the Champions League. And that's a real pool that Celtic will have with increased finances that they can use on fees, wages, add-ons. But they're going to have to spend to actually compete, because as we saw this season in the Champions League, they're not at that level, and they don't want to be further embarrassed in Europe. Rodgers, I guess, he finished third once in the Champions League group with 1 win away to Anderlecht in his first season, and that was it. Did they not lose the other 5 games?
I think
they
did, yeah.
and they just won that 1 game away in Anderlecht. They even lost Anderlecht at home, but it was 1-0, so they went to the Europa League on head-to-head. So it's going to be interesting to see how Celtic navigate that.
I can bring Finn on this with this weekend coming up, the Scottish Cup final. Finn, this probably has to be it's Rangers' biggest game of the season now, isn't it? Because with all this talk of Celtic that we've just had, and all this money that's now going to Celtic, even more than it has been in previous years, like, how monumental is this game for Rangers?
It's massive. I mean, I was saying this in the wake of I think at some point last week, where the old firm managers that don't win matches don't tend to last very long, and I think now will this be Clement's fourth Old Firm match? I think it's still, if Rangers end the season with both cups, and I think at this stage it's more hoping rather than knowing that you might compete for them. It's still a failure of a season because, as we know, like for Rangers and Celtic, the league is the bread and butter. So if you can win all the cups and do everything, but you don't win the league, it's a failure of a season. So I think the Scottish Cup, given the way that the league panned out, or rather petered out, maybe a better way of saying it, in terms of Rangers title challenge and Celtic just getting over the finishing line, I think it takes on an immense significance. But Celtic, it is just as important, because I think, say Rangers do somehow find a way to get past Celtic and win the cup, then obviously it's the last game of the season. Going into next season, it just gives them a bit more belief that they can go at Celtic. If Celtic complete the double and end the season with two of the trophies, they've ended it on the highest of highs. I think they go into next season even more emboldened, knowing, which we already know, that they're the top dogs, they're the ones to beat. It's like they're the challenge, and it's up to the other teams to try and find a way to challenge them properly. So I think it takes on a huge significance. It's also, as well, it's the first Rangers Celtic Cup final in 20 something
2 years. Yeah, 2002 Cup, the Lovingcrans one.
And it's just I'm always I love still how much this is just on a wider thing, how much we kind of respect the tradition of the Scottish Cup final. It is the final game of the Scottish football calendar. Everybody watches it regardless of whether your team's in it or not. It's an amazing showpiece. It's the 3 p.m. kickoff, like all of that stuff. I think it'll be an amazing spectacle. I think Celtic are the favourites, but it's hugely significant. There are no insignificant Rangers Celtic matches, but it takes on a huge amount of significance for both sides. Yeah, there's a lot at stake.
I'll ask the laziest question in football ever. Quick fire predictions then, guys. Anthony.
Oh god. I think it'll be really tight. I'm gonna go like 2-1 or even 3-2 Celtic. I think it could be a thriller. I think Rangers will just throw everything at it like they tried to do at Celtic Park, and if they had 11 men, could have been a totally different game. I think it's gonna be tight, and 2-1 or 3-2 Celtic, I think.
Whoa, Finn?
Unfortunately, as a Rangers fan, I think it'll be the same. I think the last couple of matches have been quite tight, and Celtic always seem to come down on the right side of those narrow margins, I think, just with the experience and mentality they have. So I will say the same. I think it'll be 2-1 to Celtic.
Interesting. Laura, do you care?
2-0 Celtic.
Laura just wants the Hampden pitch to be in pristine condition for the 9th of June.
Nobody go on it at 90
injuries
minutes.
take place.
Yeah, please, nobody injure Callum McGregor, and fans stop running on the pitch. But I also really do want a really good classic. I'd love right down to penalties, 3 each, the whole lot, sendings off, drama, controversy. Would love it. I think it'll be 2-0 Celtic. I think they'll score early on and they'll score late on, and that'll be it.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So I didn't find it funny.
Okay, folks, let's just quickly wrap up everything else that happened over the weekend, but very briefly. St Mirren clinched Europe for the first time since 1986-87 season, when they played in the Cup Winners' Cup in the following season. So that's good times for Robbo and co. And for the playoff, it's now going to be Ross County against Raith Rovers. St Johnstone won against, it was Motherwell. Yeah, they beat Motherwell comfortably. Craig Levine punching the air.
Hold on a minute, it was 2-1. Calm down.
Craig Levine's still enjoying his night anyway.
This was pure last day drama, and I love this because the St Johnstone players were waiting at full time when the game had finished to wait and see what happened in Dingwall. So Ross County were playing Aberdeen. The score was 2 each. Ross County needed to get a winner to save themselves. And there was rumours going round that they'd scored and it had been disallowed in stoppage time. I don't actually think that happened, though. I think this is Chinese whispers that were going round. I know they missed a good chance in stoppage time, but I don't think it actually went into the net. I wouldn't know because both games weren't televised, and we're piecing it together from, live score, Twitter, radio commentary. It would be great to see both these games. But anyway, really good shots that came out on Twitter afterwards of the St Johnstone players and coaches holding phones, just looking like on live score, looking on Twitter, getting text messages coming in, everyone just waiting for that full-time whistle to go. And it's just that's what I think we've kind of missed this year, because there's not really been a lot of drama at kind of either end of the table, clinching out relegation. It's all kind of been sewn up quite early this year. So that was really nice to have that right at the death.
Yeah, indeed. So no, interesting. I can't wait to see the Raith Rovers against Ross County. And it's going to be a really interesting tie. I don't know who plays first. What is it? Raith Rovers first, then
Yeah,
goes to Ross County.
Raith at home, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, good for them. Raith obviously beat Partick Thistle. Unlucky Brian Graham. That was the talk. He was the player of the year in Championship. Couldn't get them through. Elsewhere, lower down, Hamilton are back in the Championship because they beat Inverness, Caledonian Thistle, and their chairman, Scott Gardner, is getting absolute pelters. Because believe it or not, like if you think about it, for Inverness, I know, like happy Hamilton, good for you guys, but for Inverness, who have had financial problems over the years, and it still doesn't look too great, it was only 9 years ago that they were finishing third in the Premiership. And they won the Scottish Cup as well.
Yeah.
Like this time 9 years ago, they were in a Scottish Cup final, which they won, and they were third in the Premiership. Like that's mad. A decade of absolute destituteness.
It can't really be overstated how terrible a blow this is to a club like Cali Thistle. This will be the third time playing in the third tier since 1999, I think. I mean, they've kind of been perennially between the Scottish top flight and one below. The last number of seasons, I mean, they've been the ones challenging whoever it was that went up from the Championship, and they've been in playoffs and all the rest of it. And like you say, less than a decade ago, winning the Scottish Cup and third in the top flight. For Hamilton, it would have been difficult if they'd stayed down again. But I think with Hamilton, they're a club that it's much more easy for them to scale themselves for whatever the challenge is ahead. If they're in the top flight, they will find a way of being able to be competitive in the top flight. If they're in the Championship, they'll do that. When they slip down to League One, I just felt that they were able to scale the operation to what they needed to do to get out of League One, and they've shown that at the first attempt in coming back up via the playoffs. For Cali Thistle, I mean, the club was literally founded on ambitious terms by two smaller teams, rivals, joining to create a bigger team, pooling their resources together so that they could get up the divisions. Like, they are a team that see themselves as pushing for the top flight and doing that. And I think, especially for a team geographically based where they are in the Highlands, it can be tricky if you aren't able to pull in that fan base week on week. And just seeing a lot of the reaction from Cali Thistle fans, it's been pretty visceral. Like, people throwing their season tickets of 20 odd years or whatever at Scott Gardner and the board. I think it could be a really, really rough season next season for Cali Thistle, and it could be disastrous for them dropping down the division.
Well said, Finn. Well said. We had Mick Kennedy on the show last week as well, because they were at the time 2-2 with Stranraer in the playoff final to reach League Two. Stranraer obviously fighting to stay in League Two, but Stranraer were victorious in the end. It went to extra time, 120 minutes of football. Stranraer were victorious 3-1.
They played an extra half. There was 15 minutes stoppage time added on to the 90 as it was, plus the extra 30. So they played three halves essentially.
That's nuts.
And then East Kilbride just collapsed at the end. I think it was about 118 minutes or something. They conceded, and then they conceded a third, but two late goals, and also got a man sent off, and it all just sort of descended into chaos at the end. Personally, gutted, but well done to Stranraer, staying in the SPFL. Again, no access of seeing this at all. I tweeted about how this felt like I was watching on teletext. This was even less coverage because there was not even any radio coverage at this point, or commentary or any form. So yeah, had it on live score, just waiting for my phone to buzz. What year is this? Because this should not be happening in 2024.
All I can say is, and I watched the game back. Well, I watched the highlights back of the first one, and I'm now absolutely in love with the Stranraer media team who do the commentary for the Stranraer matches, because they put their highlights up on YouTube, and my God, they are a bunch of characters. I don't know their names, but the graphics are really cool and they're just hilarious. And can we just finish the podcast with the sign off from the commentary team after Stranraer had just won their victory? Because listen to this, it's a belter.
Stranraer stay in League 2, and can I say, John Hannah, Muriel Gray, Ali McCoist, Lorraine Kelly, Wally's roundabout, Kirsty Young, your boys took a hell of a beating.
Spot on.
Thanks for joining for another week. It'll be exciting next week, Scottish Cup. So thanks to yourself, Laura, Finn, Gordon Sheach from the Tartan Scarf. He's off to Germany, good lad. And Anthony Joseph from Sky Sports News. So it's just enough time to say, go and listen to something else now. Go away. Goodbye.